Welcome to Soul Nutrition, where we discuss the various ways of nourishing our souls. I'm your host, author, speaker, and coach, Reina Rose. Today's guest is Kyle Matthews. Kyle began his entrepreneurial journey at an early age when he started his own business at just 15 years old. Since that time, he has held sales and consulting roles across many different industries. His focus on radical attention paying lends success in both his personal and professional life. His purpose is to help others live out a better story and create a better world where everyone can love work. He lives with his wife and son in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, where he is passionate about God, people, and cars. Kyle, it's a joy to have you on the show today. I added that little part about cars.
Great to be here, Reina. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. I just really loved, for our audience out there, Kyle and I were connected through a mutual acquaintance, and we just had this wonderful conversation that was supposed to be 15 minutes and lasted about an hour. And I said, you know what, we need to bring you on the show. I can't wait for people to hear about just everything that you have going on. Tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming this master connector of people and getting people to truly love what they do and do what they love.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that, starting right off, it comes down to that radical attention paying. And I think that luckily I was able to have a good role model. I think it took me a little bit too long to recognize this in my life, as many of us. We start to figure out how great our parents were, growing up, and it, maybe took us a little bit longer to recognize their influence and their wisdom. But I saw the best business development guy I know, my father, interacting and connecting with everyone. And certainly, his humility and his meekness enabled him to really open up and get vulnerability out of anyone and develop trust so rapidly. And so watching that along the years and then being able to turn that into strong business connections, not only bridging the gap across different industries and seeing where multiple individuals and businesses could come together to cross that gap in a mutually beneficial way, and also from an intuitive place of connecting people based on interests, based on how they move through the world. And that's honestly one of the most rewarding things, when people come back together and like, oh man, I was hanging out with so-and-so, we've been such great friends. I'm like, oh, how'd you meet that person? Oh, it was you. It's really rewarding when you know that you had a part in making those connections happen.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how we met, is someone who is a connector like that, who said, you and you really need to get together and talk. And I was actually listening to a podcast or something that was talking about a Zig Ziglar quote, and other great teachers throughout time have taught this too, that if you help enough people get the things that they want, everything you want will come to you. And so I love that you really take that into your connections, and I'm going to connect this person and this person and this person. And often, it may be different people, but those other connections that you need all come to you as well.
Absolutely. Classic Zig Ziglar. Certainly if you're in, the business development space or anything at all business related, Zig Ziglar, Maxwell, Jim Rohn, so many greats that, I guess I'll just throw that out to some of your viewers. If you're just starting, there's a lot of really great minds that have gone before. So make sure that you learn from their expertise.
Absolutely. It's amazing. I always teach it. We can get mentors, that aren't even alive anymore. I saw someone actually say the other day, it was, Seth Godin. He was saying, mentors don't scale, to have someone come in and teach you and do, but we can find heroes, and we can find heroes in a lot of places, and you can go find heroes, whether they're alive still or not, and read their books and follow what they did and learn these lessons that are, time tested. But some of those names you mentioned, have been around for a very long time or aren't around anymore. But they're still really great teachers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you bring up another point, which is, for me, and I don't know if this rings a bell with anyone else, I feel like if I'm not getting content, whether it's brand new or whether it's things that, have happened generations ago, I get stagnant. I need my brain to be engaging with that content in order for it to spark my creativity, to remind me of the basics and form new ideas with which to move forward.
Absolutely. And what I noticed too is that, we talk about rewiring our brains for, seeing solutions, for positivity, for different things. And I'll notice it's not a constant rewiring of my brain wants to go to the old patterns. That is what we hear in a lot of society, right? Is the problem, not the solution. And oh, everybody says they're going to do those things, but people don't really do them. And getting my mind back in the frame, no, I'm actually doing these things. I'm not just talking about it. I'm taking action every day to make these things happen. And if it doesn't happen exactly this way, it will happen in a better way, because God's ways are so much higher than our ways, and they always do. And so, I've been told so many times throughout my career and throughout my life that, oh, this thing's impossible, or it's going to take you this many decades to do X, Y, or Z. And, I always say, I'll pray about it.
It reminds me a lot of, I think it's Andy Andrews' book, Bottom of the Pool. Another great book. And I really like his premise of realizing things that are true and going deeper to find what is the truth.
I like that.
There's really nuanced things, but it requires taking the time, paying attention, and figuring out, getting down to the bedrock of what is the foundational truth. In this case, all things are possible with him. All things are possible in God's economy. So when you look at that truth, yes, this is difficult. Yes, this traditionally takes X amount of time. And let's also look at another truth. So that's a big coupling of, faith and business, where we can really have breakthroughs and hold on to something that goes and really transcends a lot of the noise that you may or may not be hearing in your specific situation in business.
And, I love what you pointed out. One of my mentors used to say that to me all the time. We would always take walks along the harbor and just chat, and I would say something and she'd say, that's true, but I think there's something truer. And all of my mentors are so great. None of them ever give me the answer of what that truer thing is. Of course, they send me on a journey to discover that for myself. But one thing that you mentioned, and actually has really helped me just since our last conversation, is finding the and in a situation.
Yeah.
Describe, I know that's something like with customers. I was actually thinking of it today with our customers, the and. Could you explain to us what that is when you're finding the and for your customers?
Absolutely. And that's actually something I need to give credit to my Helios team for, because that's one of the core values that we adhere to, which is to find the and. And so, we see through the roots of AI, or appreciative inquiry, that, one of their basic premises is words create worlds. Say that 5 times fast. And we see that, having that idea really springboards into watching how we say what we say, and going to an and versus a but, for example. Yeah. There's usually an and if we're looking hard enough. so all that to say, I think there's certainly times for absolutes, and there's usually opportunities to be creative and find a way that you can reach a solution by being creative and looking for other opportunities for success, other avenues. So yeah, it's been fun to not only see what that can do in conversation, and it's fun to see what that can do in terms of business deals and the impact on mindset when you start working along those lines with that as a maybe a mental subset that you're running through.
Definitely.
I guess what I'll say is
uh-huh.
it frames it in abundance too. That's another piece.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I love following Father Richard Rohr. He's a Catholic, a monk. And I love it. His emails come to me daily and I don't always get a chance to open them, but I never delete them. I'll mark them unread and come back later. But that's one of the things he talks about is, oftentimes in any religion, and Christianity is no exception, we get caught up in this dualistic mentality that it's either or, it's my way or the highway. It's, even between churches we see, if you don't believe our exact mission statement, that last word or that middle word, you're definitely not a Christian. Or, there's this dualistic, it has to be black or white mentality. And he goes into the scriptures in such a beautiful way of showing how God is really a God of both and the non-dualistic way of viewing the scriptures and viewing life and viewing salvation. And it's just, I find his talks and his newsletters so interesting for that reason, because instead of thinking, putting God in this little box of finite ways that we can think about things, it begins to explore the and.
It's a very Hebraic approach.
Yes.
Holding multiple tensions, which, in our current climate, I believe that is, powerful to be able to be a voice of reason and to hold competing tensions in a mature way.
Yes. And that's another monk who's passed, but has been one of my greatest influences. He would say, as far as scripture is concerned, would the Holy Spirit ever tell a lie? Of course not. Would the Holy Spirit tell the truth through tragedy and loss and these horrible stories? Of course. So it's not such we shouldn't be so concerned about the facts of the truth in these things, but that the Holy Spirit is bringing forth the truth in a way that people can understand, which might be through loss and tragedy. And because you don't need to get caught up in the problems of the Bible, but the lessons that the Holy Spirit is teaching and the truths that come from it.
Right. Ask, seek, and knock.
Absolutely. Exactly. Well, one thing that I really wanted to ask you, because I was watching it on something that you did when I was studying you, and you were talking about staying on top of customers' special moments.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to dig into that.
I'm totally blanking on the name of the author, but there's a book called Moments.
Okay.
And maybe we can throw a link up to that when we find it later. I know that I think John Deere was one of the examples that was used in this, but creating in that specific example, creating an onboarding moment. But in this case, as far as business development, what can you do to create that special moment between you and the customer? And to me, it comes back to that radical attention paying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you go in and you're able to focus on that customer, you're going to pick up on some clues. When you walk into that individual's office, you're going to know what's important to them. One quick glance around the office and you're going to know. And so if you're able to really focus on that and build a bond, not in a cheesy sales way, but in a true way of connecting with what is important to them in their life, that's typically the first step in creating what can then later be used to put together a really special moment, either personally and or professionally, whether it's meeting a specific need of the business that you heard because you were paying radical attention, and or, you know, if we're talking about a main decision maker, we're able to do something that, you know, I guess the best way to say it is really speaks their language, right? Or meets them where they're at.
Yeah. And I think I saw you in an interview mention something about someone who wasn't paying attention to the customers, you know, radically paying attention, and they bought them like some really nice whiskey or something, and the client didn't drink, you know? And so it was just a complete, well, nice gesture, but
yeah, it's a mismatch. And yeah, it's not, you know, sales isn't a one size fits all because people aren't a one size fits all.
right. And you know, one thing I've been really contemplating lately, because, you know, I'm running a business with another woman, and so, you know, generally business and sales is thought of as a very masculine energy, male dominated kind of industry, right? And as I was actually praying and sitting with this, and I was thinking, you know, to really lead rather than try to be more manly than men, right? And like get in there and do it the same way, but you're just not, right?
Right.
As I was praying about that, I felt like God saying, you need to run this business from the beautiful parts of feminine essence, and let your sales, and I guess everybody can do this, but it really just came to me in a very, again, because we're two women running this company, let your sales be an invitation, you know, an invitation to be a part of the spearheading technology that we are bringing to the market, and, you know, inviting them to these different companies that we've researched and kind of pioneered which ones are the best. And instead of trying to tell them which ones it is, just inviting them, like, if you'd like to know about this, we are extending our invitation.
Absolutely. And if I may, I believe that there's an and there. And when it comes to elevating our skills as business development professionals, you know, we talked about understanding, you know, the greats that have gone before us in this space. One of the things really does come down to the language piece. And so, you know, for your female, you know, viewers, stop saying sorry for things that you didn't do. That's like one of the biggest things that I coach my female coworkers on. Like, why are you saying sorry? You didn't cause this delay. You didn't. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. It's like a go-to trigger. And so like on the mental subconscious side of that, it creates that softer language. And then someone on the other side, just because the psychology behind it, is less likely to take action on requests. And so male and female alike, when we use, for example, when we craft emails where we're looking for a certain desired response, we certainly don't want to be curt. However, we also don't want to be, oh, I think that this would be great. Please, would you? We can be really direct. Attached is the proposal I put together for you. Can't wait to hear back. Let me know what you think. Really direct language. And so that's something that I taught, you know, I grew up in a home that was, you know, mind your P's and your Q's. And so it took me a while to change that. And when I did, I saw the response rate and the response time change dramatically in my favor.
Absolutely. Someone who sent me an email recently, I think they have been a guest on the show, actually. I believe it was Aaron Walker. He's have been a guest on the show, and he, on the bottom of his email, it says, you know, ask me why this email is 5 sentences or less. And I've really thought about that now when I do get long emails that are like several paragraphs, especially from someone that I'm not incredibly familiar with. You just don't read them. And so this not being too curt, of course, but, you get to the point and you say what they're interested in and want to receive from you. And then you get out of the conversation because they don't want to read a long email.
Right. Well, and typically if that's the case, if you need to write an email that long, don't pick up the phone.
Exactly.
Right. Pick up the phone. And so, that's what it comes down to, especially folks that are new in this industry. That's a fear. I know I can say this, really good buddy and an incredible business development gentleman, John Geringer. He's actually here, has built several incredible wealth management firms. And his thing was, I had to do push-ups before I picked up the phone to amp myself up. So whatever you got to do, I don't care if you got to do push-ups in the office, you got to get over your fear of the phone. And obviously, I'm kind of an old school guy. I'm not, pushing, hey, everyone needs to get a phone call. We certainly, again, if we're radically attention paying, we're going to know, does this person prefer a text? We're in the 21st century. That's not taboo anymore. Is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Really figuring out what is that person's preferred method of communication. And sometimes it is going to be face-to-face or a phone call. And if that's a fear, that's something that needs to be conquered. We know what God says about that. There's no place for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that person needs to take a job doing cold calls just for a while, just so they can completely get over the fear. I remember when I first started out in air charter, and I had to, they just give me lists of thousands of people to call. And sometimes I would be calling like Wells Fargo Bank, who owns the aircraft, but that's obviously not the actual owner, Right. And I'm like trying to get to, but it really, calling thousands and thousands of people, getting very little to no response. It's like to pick up the phone is nothing now, right? And we have to get over those fears. Of course, being on the very edge of millennials, I still do have that, like, unless we're going to be in person, let's just text. But that doesn't always work in business, right? Like someone may need that email or a phone call or whatever that it is that they prefer. And then respecting, of course, their time as well. Like if it's going to be an email, make it short, and even a phone call, right? Like what they need, get to the point.
Marketing, right? You want to get that, one of my favorite lines, and, if this serves someone out there, fantastic. Hey, Reina, thanks for picking up the phone. Is now still an okay time? Right. And then if I get your buy-in, okay, it's game on. Or maybe it's, hey, you know what? I got a meeting in 5 minutes. Perfect. This will take 3. And then actually
deliver on 3 minutes.
And if you need to, as a business development professional, if you need more time than that, use your 3 minutes to schedule that time. Right.
Yes, definitely. So speaking of some people having fear of, picking up the phone for work, these kind of things, tell me more about your vision of having everybody love work.
Oh man. How much time do we have?
We have all the time in the world.
So this is, that's the mission at Helios. And so it's really exciting to be on a team that practices what they preach. And so, we really focus on the team level, since that's where so much work gets done, right? If you kind of break it down, okay, you can break it down to the individual, but really if we look at especially large organizations, many things happen in business units and or teams. And so that's our focus. We've actually got an app that works people through together learning a new language of energy intelligence. And so by doing that together, it allows us to work through a lot of our issues in a way that instead of pointing fingers at each other, we're able to deal with that discord out here and use that shared language to navigate it in a much more generative fashion. So we have this radical idea that you shouldn't experience burnout like so many people are today. That's why, the World Health Organization, made it a thing.
Yeah.
And so getting rid of that Sunday evening feeling of, right, the anxiety building, I got to go to work. We spend more time with our coworkers than we do our families often. And so we've got to fix this. I'm the biggest fan of capitalism ever. And there's a good way to do this, right?
Yes.
We can do this without being greedy. We can build companies that help others and meet needs. And so that idea is one that we believe can't be phoned in, right? This is not going to get fixed by changing your mission and vision statements. This needs to be lived out. And so that's why our approach is so different. A couple of reasons. Number one, instead of just doing this high level work by investing in the top C-suite and expecting it to matriculate down into the rest of the team, you and I have seen that play out. It doesn't work. So by interacting on a team level and spending that 5 minutes a day as an individual, 15 minutes together in a traditional, a weekly team meeting, powwow, whatever, you're actually going to see that change culture and embed. So we don't want to come in and have that workshop experience where you're up here and then that over the next 3 months that impact is going to drop off precipitously, versus it's kind of like, again, when I say learning a new language, a lot of the successful apps today, it's just the bite-sized learning.
Yes.
And over time we are learning a new way of interacting with ourselves and others that's sustainable, and it's tied into our intrinsic motivators. And so when we do that together as a team, we're building psychological safety. So psychological safety is this really cool thing that Amy Amundsen put together, wrote the white paper on it after using the research while she was at Google across all these high performing teams. And finally, after looking at all the data, what it came down to is psychological safety. And this is really, really bringing it down to a basic level. There's a lot of depth there. And it's just, the ability for me to bring my ideas in front of the team and feel safe about doing so.
Yes.
Whether it's good news or bad news.
Right. And even if it's good work or bad work, I was watching something the other day about, just do a project every day instead of waiting for it to be perfect before you could present something. Presenting something every single day so that that some of the ideas are going to be rubbish and some of the ideas are going to be great. And they talked about an experiment where they asked people, it might have been a group of artists, I want this 50% of the group to do 3 pieces of art every day. And this 50%, we want to make a masterpiece.
Ooh.
And they said, ultimately, the people who did 3 pieces of art every day ended up making masterpieces. And most of the people who were challenged to make a masterpiece didn't meet the deadlines, because the inspiration never hit. And so, but they were saying part of why that psychological safety of presenting ideas only if they're a masterpiece prevents people from doing any work at all.
Right. Well, and it can lead to, they actually, Corporate Rebels wrote a great article on psychological safety that not only explained it well, but gave examples of what happens when psychological safety is not present. So, most people watching will remember the Challenger disaster. Yeah, probably avoidable. That one stings, right? So you can tell, it's not just like, oh, office place, uh, happiness. No, this has deep and grave implications if we don't pay attention to it. So I
So
think
tell us a little bit about the Challenger disaster and what could have played out better.
I think in this case it was the danger to what could happen with rapidly changing temperatures of the ceramics on the outside. But essentially, the individual that surmised that this could be an issue did not have the psychological safety to go, hey guys, I think we could potentially have a problem.
Right. This is something, in my days of being flight crew that they're constantly, for us, CRM is crew resource management, right? And they're constantly talking about the old days, a lot of planes crashed because no one could usurp the captain. Nobody could say anything to the captain because the captain was in charge and nobody second guesses the captain. And
Right.
so particularly, it was a lot in Asian cultures that had a very, even the culture itself, beyond being a pilot and a captain, was all about respect and honor, and you're not honoring him if you questioned it, and kept to themselves that they were about to fly into, or I think you could hear him on the black box saying, isn't there a mountain right there? I think there might be a mountain right in front of us. And ultimately they crashed right into the mountain because he couldn't say to the captain,
there's a mountain.
There is a mountain there. We need to lift up. I'm going to take control right now because you don't see this mountain. And you could hear him trying to be very polite, trying to just say, there might be a mountain in front of us. I think you may, without saying you should or do anything. And they crash right into a mountain. And we do this in our businesses because we don't have the psychological safety. How does a company create that psychological safety?
Yeah. So that's actually the fun part, because a lot of people from a theory standpoint, they get it, right? They're like, okay, psychological safety, cool. How do we do this? And so really it is a step-by-step process. And so for us, again, it comes down to that shared language that allows us individually to operate more in flow and get, have the ability to be more productive. And so with the, I guess when it comes down to psychological safety, as the team interacts, number one, if this is done correctly and we're increasing communication, I stop seeing you as Reina in sales gal Reina, right? I start seeing Reina, the human, right? Yeah. Reina that, loves, hiking, right? Reina that, oh, hey, I like that too. I didn't know. So you start to see these bonds that form across the team, especially with people that maybe don't naturally run in our circles, because when you think about it, oftentimes we don't choose our coworkers, they're put together. And so it's really easy to put people in boxes. But when we start to see them as individuals, when we start to see them as, oh, they're a parent too, I'm a parent, there's a bond. Hey, Joe likes bowling. I didn't know Joe likes bowling. Hey, and so it's really that you're building trust. So it's not just two people in the whole team that have trust. It's a collective trust. And then the ability of a leader to really make sure that that environment continues to be safe, and not in a fluffy kind of way. And so I guess what I'll say there is some of the most healthy teams have some of the most fierce debates. I've gone toe to toe with my colleagues, and we're completely 180 on issues. And the next day, we're sitting next to each other and everything's great, because that trust is there, because that respect is there. And that doesn't happen organically.
Right. It happens intentionally. You know, that's something that I think our world needs more of. I intentionally put myself in the complete opposite of echo chambers whenever I can, because, you know, just to be around people who think exactly like I think and believe exactly like I believe isn't going to stretch me to find the ands that exist in life. And, you know, as you were speaking, I was thinking of two different sides of this coin of, you know, I've seen it turn out very badly and very well. And I worked in a crew once that it was very badly, where there was just one pilot on the crew that I would have been like, I think there's a mountain there we're about to fly into. And I remember there was some ice on the wings, right? And the pilot that I really trusted wasn't there. And I texted a picture and I said, hey, is this safe? Because I didn't feel comfortable asking the other one if it was safe, because he would have been like, why are you questioning me? I know what's safe. Of course I looked at that wing, you know, where the other one was like, oh, you know, yeah, that's a good call, but that's fine. It's just a little frost, you know, and I felt comfortable asking that. And if he were there, I would have asked. Where I have a friend, she works for Snapchat, and they're very, you know, of course there's, you know, CEOs and there's C-suites and all that, but everybody has a voice. Even if you're the janitor and you hear an idea, you know, you have a voice to say something. It's not like, oh, well, you're the janitor and you obviously have no good ideas, right?
Well, and I believe that we're going to see a real shift, because there've been companies that have handled this disorientation in the market really well, and those that have taken a real fear-based approach and a lack of trusting in their people. So that's why you see a skyrocketing in the spyware. You know, oh, you need to check in on Zoom every 10 minutes, or we don't know you're working, stuff like that. You know, a lot of the
even having them come into work physically because they don't think they're working when they're not there.
Absolutely.
And then
when the data
rising the numbers,
the opposite. And so we've really seen that, you know, the futurists are basically saying this event, this COVID chaos, if you will, has sped up the future of work by about a decade.
Absolutely. I agree.
So I truly believe that there are people that are working in jobs where there is a lack of trust, and they're doing it now because they need it for the security of feeding their family. And when this environment changes and gets, you know, the landscape changes and they have a little bit more breathing room, they're out of there. Those companies are not going to survive.
Right. As soon as they find a company that will allow them to work autonomously, probably from wherever, as long as they're getting their work done, they're going to hop to that company as soon as possible.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. You know, there's, you know, some people that they may accept that, but the vast majority will no longer accept a work environment that looks like that.
And companies too, you know, this is also a benefit for companies, because now you're not paying for someone to sit in a chair in an office for 8 hours a day. You're paying for productivity. You're paying to have a job done. I was reading, actually, I have it right here. Let me grab it. I've just been so excited. This book, Exponential Organizations.
Oh, okay.
I've got like my tabs and everything.
Nice.
But it talks about, these organizations that have disrupted industries, Uber disrupting the taxi industry,
Mhm.
Google disrupting how we look up information, right?
Indeed, hotels, yeah, the list goes on
Right.
and on.
And the things that they have, and they're paying often, they'll have, what do they call it? Like their workers are often coming in to do a contract job, and then and that's more the wave of the future, where it used to be like, if you did contract work, you were basically unemployed and got a job now and then. That
Right.
now people are going to be a lot more flexible to go do a job here, do a job there, and get paid for a job well done, rather than just to warm a seat in a cold office for 8 hours or more.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think I saw statistics, and this was years ago, but that people spent X amount of hours sending chain emails from work, X amount of hours in the bathroom, like all these ways to
I had
waste their
forgotten about
workday, right?
the old chain email. Thank
Yeah.
goodness most of those died off.
Yeah, this was like
Oh,
that, and that was back then. And even I've seen like hours they spend in the bathroom, just all these ways to waste time at work because you're simply being paid to warm a seat, right?
well, and imagine again if individuals were able to operate at in flow, so now they're getting more done in less time, and they can increase the amount of time in any given day that they are in that flow state, which then allows them to rest, recover, restore, which is a huge necessary piece to maintain peak performance, not even
Absolutely.
considering the amount of time that then they're going to have with family, which, in my mind is important, not only, for me personally, but as a nation. I think that's something that's important.
I agree. And I think we're seeing during this time people's ability to get a lot of work done in a small amount of time. We're seeing deadlines that were projected years out be done in a matter of weeks or a month or so because it's necessary. And, I used to work underneath the Google building and at the gym there when I taught Pilates back in the day. And I remember, and this was, 10 plus years ago. Um, and even then, Google would, have their employees work, and when they were done, they just could go home. So we'd have Google employees come in at noon, come in at, 2 p.m. Whenever they finished their work, they had a certain amount of time and they could delegate it and be autonomous. And, I just saw that and I said, this is going to be how, again, this was a decade ago. This is how companies will operate, more than a decade. This is how companies will operate in the future because it just makes sense. Why not pay people to do a job so that they do it effectively and then allow them to have their time? They're going to continue to work for you. The employee satisfaction, their creativity is going to rise. It made sense even then, and it makes so much more sense now. As you said, we've kind of sped a decade
Right.
beyond what we would have had COVID-19 not popped up.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on, you talked about energy intelligence. Tell me
Mhm.
more.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite topics. And so when it comes down to energy, oftentimes we really think about the things that we're good at. And unfortunately, much of our upbringing has pointed us to things that we're good at with no regard for the fact that that may or may not be sustainable.
Mm.
So I think that's why you see a lot of folks that go through and, hey, I'm really good at math and, I like business. And so, oh, well, perfect, Johnny, you should be an accountant. And then you see them go and they get the job at one of the big three firms. And then you wonder why 2-3 years later, they're super crispy and they're like, I'm out.
Uh-huh.
And they walk away from six-figure jobs to, start their own winery or start a small business or whatever it is, because, or completely change industries
Oh, yeah.
because they were really good at doing something that drained their batteries. So a good way
Mm.
to think about it, especially on an individual. So for the viewers that are watching this, it's like, when you have your device, right? and you're looking at your phone, and you know that there are different apps on that phone that are going to draw down the battery, the energy at different rates. So we need to consider, what are those apps that we're running throughout the day, and how do they affect our total energy? And do we have a routine that allows us not only to increase our capacity for those things, but also it enables us to recharge and refill those buckets for the next day so that it's sustainable? So we really need to figure out as individuals, not only what are the things that I'm good at, right? If you're talking Venn diagram stuff, what are the things I'm good at, and what are the things that energize me? And that middle piece is a true strength.
Yes.
And when you operate out of that, again, now we're talking flow. It is game on, right? The things that you can get done in a state of flow, you're like, man, I just did a day's worth of work in an hour.
Yeah.
Like, we know when we're in that state of flow, right? It's easy. And so that's where it tempts us to, this can't be right. This is too easy. Well, not so fast. Sometimes when we identify those true strengths, it feels easy because we're operating out of that place of, understanding what our intrinsic motivators are, and being able to attach that to how we work, so that we're able to come back and do that consistently. So then if you take that to the next level, when you have an entire team that knows, okay, well, as a team, what are the things we need to get done? This really energizes me. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it well again and again and again. Hey, this stuff over here, that eats my lunch. And people tend to think that, oh, well, because that eats my lunch, it eats everybody else's lunch.
Right.
Well, not the case. Other people are like, that's my cup of tea. I'll take that. I'd love to do that. Right. So
Absolutely.
that's the fun piece is individually it's powerful. And then when it scales on a team level, now we're rocking and rolling.
So how do you teach people to figure out what their intrinsic motivators are?
Yeah, great question. We actually use an assessment called Strength Scope. And so the fun part about that is it's available through, through our app, as well as, through an online course that helps out with a self debrief, in the absence of needing, a little bit more intense time, and budget, really. So we wanted to do that so we could help the most people. So the cool part about it is the assessment, and I hope I get the body right. It's it comes from across the pond in the UK, and I think it's the British Psychological Institute. Said that this test is, it's reliable. And essentially what that means is, whether, Reina had a bad day or the best day, whatever those other factors are, it's going to continue to ring true. And so,
we've all taken the test that one day we're this, the next day we're that. I love the Enneagram test, and then finally I figured out which one I am. But I probably mistested twice before I read a more lengthy book on it, and kind of saw what I was as a kid and how that's to now. And then I'm like,
super
I'm
curious
definitely a 7.
where you're at on the Enneagram.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of being a 7, I heard in another interview you were doing. Are you a 7 as well?
Off the charts.
Yes, everything is about having fun, right? So tell me about having fun in the workplace and making sure that whatever we're doing, like you said, we all enjoy our work. We love it. We're having fun. How do you incorporate that into, or how do you help clients and your own business incorporate fun into their business?
Well, I think, again, it's a big energizer for me, right? And so the Enneagram's an incredibly powerful tool. And I like to couple that with energizers, because then I have a path forward, and I can tweak things in my schedule so that I can keep not only the energy high, but to your point, the fun high. Because then now I'm not taking my overwhelming sevenness and just dumping, backing up the dump truck and overwhelming people. If I have, again, the radical attention paying, that energy intelligence, and now I'm able to take one of my giftings and speak someone else's language in order to give them a boost in energy, a boost in mood. And so again, there's additional levels. So it's not just, what to say on that. There's not an easy button. It's something that you continue to figure out, and to me, it ties into the topic of leadership, because it's not just, oh, hey, this is the Kyle show. It's, hey, this is a team, and every single person, to your point, is motivated and moves through the world differently. And as we understand that, coupled with our own growth and our own maturity, those two things really work hand in hand.
Yeah, I love that as a 7, I can realize that I also have like that 8 wing, right? And so I will go into the 8 and get like systems created.
Sure.
So that things take me less time and I can go have fun again.
Well, and again, there are people that love to run those systems.
Right. And I don't like to run them. I'll create them, but I don't want to necessarily run them.
Right.
But the motivator, I've realized, is still fun. It's like, I'll create this system so that this particular task takes me, or whoever ends up running it, 1/10 of the time.
Right.
And now we can go enjoy our life more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. And again, that's part of that radical attention paying, right? Making sure that we are paying attention to how someone else operates, and even for me, like I said, sometimes I'm just creating the system and then delegating, but instead of delegating it while it takes the full amount of time, like figure out how I can take 1/10 of the time and then delegate it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like, I'm going to benefit that person more.
When it comes down to again, even the more subtle nature of actually taking the time to figure out where someone's at, right? Because, if you come in and I treat you the same every day, let's say there's a day when you're on top of the world and you may react completely differently versus, if you lost a pet, or you have a family member that you just found out is terminally ill, or right, like there's so many things that make up who we are as humans. And so as leaders, it's no longer, in my opinion, it's no longer acceptable to just say, oh, nope, this is business. This is, you can't talk about this stuff. You can't be human,
Yeah.
And we need to be able to, really have proper energy around those things for our people. And if we're bringing up the people around us, because the biggest pushback there is like, oh, well, you're going to have people that call off all the time. They're like, oh, I'm not having a good day, right? It's a high anxiety day. And I believe that there's space for that as folks choose not to be victims. That there may be bad days, and that's proper. You need a mental health day. I want you to take that mental health day, and I want you to continue to build your maturity and your resilience. So how do we take you through that journey, right? So again, it's that push pull. It's that holding multiple tensions of expecting greatness, and understanding some basic human needs and being able to navigate that. And so I think that that's a big part of this leadership crisis is figuring those things out. if you're not just getting into business development, if you're, a guru, you've been doing this for many years, I strongly suggest putting rare leadership on your list. There's two co-authors. One of them is Dr. Jim Wilder, using the latest in brain science. They call the guy a neurotheologian.
I love that term.
It's unbelievable. So we're talking the latest brain science, and the rare in rare leadership is an acronym. So when it comes to leveling ourselves up, we're talking remain relational, act like yourself, return to joy, and endure hardship well. And those are the characteristics of a rare leader. And so it doesn't take but a short glance around us to understand that those are characteristics that we need more of in today's, I'll just keep in business. We need more
and
of
life,
that.
actually, as you were mentioning those, I was listening to something the other day, and those were the exact characteristics for happiness.
Yeah, happiness, and I would even probably challenge that and say joy.
Yes, right, because that enduring hardship well, and it was saying happiness, the particular thing I was listening to, but that is what joy is that sustained joy even when you're enduring hardship. And that was actually the key to people who were the happiest, is that they were slightly more, they were more immune actually to overwhelm, because they endured hardship well. They knew that it was a part of life, that it was going to come, and how to endure it when it did come. And then, of course, like you were saying, knowing that balance of, okay, let's figure out also how to get out of this hardship so that it's not an enduring thing that does burn you out.
Big time.
I wanted to talk a little bit about we just have a few minutes left, but you told me about luke10.com last time we were talking, and checking in on a heart level. Talk to us about is it sachet acronym?
Sachet, yeah, sachet.
Sachet.
So one of the organizations that I'm really passionate about, from a faith perspective, is the Luke 10 organization, and the simple rhythms that they what they call them, rhythms of attention. And so essentially we're talking about checking in on a heart level and listening to Jesus, which is something that really transcends, to your earlier point, a lot of the legalistic or denominational specific doctrine, and it gets to the heart of loving the Lord our God with our whole heart, soul, mind, right? Loving our neighbors as ourselves. It gets down to that very essence that brings us together and focuses on that. So to land the plane and come back to the checking in on a heart level, you can certainly go off script, but if someone's new to this, it's that idea that it's going to prime these these adjectives, these emotions. So sachet stands for sad, angry, scared, happy, excited, tender. Right? So if I was checking in with you today, number one, I wouldn't just boom check in, because when we do that from a gut level, right? Hey, how are you today? I'm good.
Happy.
Right? So not only business, right? Because I do this in business, but think about church lobbies. Hey, Reina, good to see you. It's Sunday. How are you? I'm good. Right? Like, my cat just died, but I'm good. Or, insert other tragedy here versus, right? Nobody wants to be a Debbie Downer, and we want authenticity, and we want to be at a place where we can be there for each other, right? Because we're called not only to rejoice with those who are rejoicing, but also to weep with those who weep, right? So when we talk about really being in a place where we can do that, we need to have the ability as spiritual mothers and fathers to check in on a heart level. So, okay, actually, let me scan what's going on in my body, what's going on in my heart, right? This clunky
Mm,
old thing, right? Especially men, I'm looking at you, right? We got to get through and say, you know what? I'm actually really experiencing, um, for example, a tough one that now I tune into a lot. Hey, I'm feeling tender today,
mm,
right? I found out that a good buddy, you know, their son has something that really is terminally affecting them, and so, man, I am tender because of that situation,
mm,
and I'm in. Right. Again, I'm paying attention to whether you're checking in with one other person or you're checking in as a group. I'm in. Right. And then so, this is powerful in groups. It's powerful for me personally. It's powerful, in my marriage, because essentially what it does is nothing builds up. If we're
mm-hmm,
checking in together as close to daily as possible, nothing gets swept under the carpet. Hey, Kyle, you had the opportunity. You could see I was busy with our son. Why didn't you wash the dishes? Oh man, I didn't even cross my radar. I'm really sorry. And so instantly that's taken care of. So when it comes to keeping accounts short, et cetera, those are the types of things. And it allows you to tune into and hold space for your your spouse in this situation, or your team members if it's in another situation, which then takes us to the expert facilitation side. Because all you viewers that have been doing this the same way for many years, pay attention. Our instinct is, I'm going to pray for you. Let's pray. Right? Which sometimes is exactly what's needed, and sometimes it's not helpful. And so
mm,
by by putting the individual experiencing heavy emotion back in the driver's seat, we are honoring them. And we're offering
absolutely.
them, hey, would you like us, again, returning to joy, would you like us to just be with you and continue on with these rhythms, right? Knowing that we're glad to be with you no matter what. Would you like us to pray for you? Would you like us to take this to Jesus on your behalf and do some listening for you? Would you like us to share relevant stories of when we were in a similar situation? And or if it's right, hey, maybe this is something that you would like to take offline and we could do some coaching about, depending on the situation. But now
Mm-hmm,
I've put that person back in the driver's seat,
yeah.
which is really, really powerful. And as a church, it's something that we tend to not do well.
I
We
can
can do
remember a
better.
friend when I was experiencing what Mother Teresa called a dark night of the soul, right? And I knew it. I knew it was, and I was very aware that it was just a season that was a very dark season, and I wasn't feeling happy and excited very often, right? Which actually, as a 7, is my normal state, right? Which kind of freaked people out. And I had a friend, who's used to me carrying the joy for everyone in a
Sure.
way,
Sure.
right? And she's telling me, it's going to pass. It's going to be okay. And I said, I know it's going to pass and that it's going to be okay. And I'm just sitting with where I'm at now. And I could use you to just be with me here now in this season that is a little bit darker in some ways, a little bit less exciting, and maybe a
Hmm.
little sad, even if we go to those that acronym. It's a little bit of a sad season, and I just
Yeah.
need you to sit with me here. I know it will pass. I know it will get better. Um,
It's interesting. When I did a little bit of listening before I jumped on our call today, and the one thing I wrote down was the power of presence. And I hadn't really tied it together until now, but I think this is powerful. It comes down to, when others are grieving, there's many true statements that we make as Christians, and we don't even think about the potential carnage. And I can share, from my own personal experience there, something that's very real for me, very real for my wife. We lost 2 sons really late in pregnancy. They were born alive. They didn't have those key systems to keep them going. And so a lot of these things that I'm talking about allowed my wife and I to overcome the odds that basically give us a built-in divorce.
Right.
After losing one. And so when we come back to this, being with others, weeping with those who weep, right? Oh, well, God's timing is perfect. Yes. And if you say that to me again, I'm going to knock your 2 front teeth out.
Yeah.
So, again, like these true statements, yes, they're true. Ask yourself before they roll off your tongue, ask yourself, are they helpful? Because sometimes all I want to know is that you care about me and you're there for me and with me. And so as painful as those experiences were, now we're able to sit with others that are experiencing similar pain, and we're able to just be there and to see that healing. And so, I mean, that's a huge, a huge takeaway that obviously is near and dear to my heart. But for those people in your network that are going through those things, they don't want your platitudes. They want your heart. They want your presence.
The best thing anyone ever said to me after my brother died, and some people said some really dumb things, to be honest, they just rolled off the tongue before they thought about it. They didn't. And I understand. And I do tell anyone who, hasn't been through that kind of loss, because somebody who has knows. But the best thing someone ever said to me was, she just came up and said, there are no words. And that was it. She was just there. There are no words, because there aren't any words. There aren't, this happens for a reason. There aren't, I lost a lot of weight when it happened, and people, oh, well, at least you got to lose some weight, like just dumb,
Wow.
Probably after it went off their tongue, they probably wanted to retract it. But just holding space for someone that there are no words for what you're going through. There's nothing I can say right now that's going to help this situation, but I'm here.
When it comes back to building joyful communities, which is a big thing, that Luke 10, works with around the world, going back to that definition of being glad to be with each other no matter what. Yeah. I'm glad to be with Reina when she's, operating out of, her high energy state, bringing up the team. And if she's having a day where, dare I say the D word, the depressing thoughts, guess what? I'm still glad to be with you. And knowing that and being in a community that operates that way, and a high joy community, that is the type of thing that's sustaining. That's the type of thing that is community changing. That's the type of thing that is, country changing. That's the kind of thing that is world changing.
Yes. And I love the part, and we got to wrap up in just a few minutes, or I'm going to go way over the network time. But I love the part that, because I've heard of people going around in a circle in an organization and saying what they're feeling that day. But I love the and follow-up that is, and I'm in. Because it allows me to, like, for instance, today, I don't know if I'm up in the mountains today. I was a little bit tired, and I could come here, I'm a little bit tired, and I'm in. And we're professionals, and we show up and we give what we said we'd give, right? And I can also be a little bit more tired than usual, and yes, I'm showing up, my cat died and I'm a little depressed, whatever it might be, right. And I'm in, right? I'm letting you know that I'm coming from maybe a slightly different energy today. So you may mistake that as not being in, but I'm fully in. Right. I like that and follow up that is part of the Helios mantra, right? Is that and.
A lot of cross,
Yes, so I love that follow up. Kyle, where can people find you, find Helios, find everything that you're doing, because
Yep.
I know that.
I'll try and rattle it off real quick. Me personally, I'm a big Instagram guy. Kyle the Inspirer is my handle. Helios. We're hip. We're in the tech space, so it's helios.work is our address. Luke 10 is lk10.com. A lot of great resources out there, but certainly, if I can be helpful, definitely track me down. Always looking for folks that are looking to make an impact in their sphere of influence and the world around them.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if I'm a company and I'm wanting to help my employees love their work, I'm going to want to come to Helios and get some.
Absolutely. Yeah, we started at team level, and again, our focus is larger organizations, and we realize that all you need is a team, of, let's call it ballpark 10. If you want to supercharge that area by learning a language of energy intelligence together, we'd love to help you out with that.
Excellent. So yes, I really encourage you, check out Kyle on Instagram, go to the Helios website. We'll try to get that up here on the channel. And I want to thank you all for just coming into this conversation with us. I love having you here, and I see the numbers going up with the network every day. Thank you so much for watching. And until I see you again, may the Lord bless and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, and nourish your soul.